So good morning, everyone. My name is Joel Baird. I'm with the Ghiordes Knot, along with Corey in the back, who you know is the manager, and the rest of our team, Marino and Sherry. And we want to welcome you here this morning. Our goal is to calm you down and have you learn some techniques, both personally and professionally, that may help you through that. We want to welcome our guest, Patricia Tattrie. She's here to assist us today, and I think the information she has will be very beneficial for all of us. We're going to be discussing the concepts of OOG design, wintering, integrating wellness practices into your daily routine. So it's kind of a combination of things that all overlap. My question is, how many of us here have felt overwhelmed this week? You don't have to put your hands up. I'm assuming we all had things like that, but our goal today is for you to get some pieces out of this that you can find helpful in your daily life. So what I'd like you to do is just relax and enjoy, and we will have copies of the presentation available if you would like it. So don't worry about taking notes. There's resources in front of you that Patricia has put together as follow-up to the discussion today. So with that, I will go here. So again, our topic is called Live Well, Design Well. I'll first give you a little bit of a bio of Patsy so you know that we actually brought someone in that knows what they're talking about. It's not me.
Ideally.
So Dr. Patricia Tattrie brings a wealth of professional and personal experience to her work in wellness and mental health. After transitioning from a corporate career to earn a doctorate in humanistic clinical psychology, she established her private practice, where she helps clients navigate challenges such as anxiety, addiction, chronic pain, and more. Her unique blend of diverse life experience, advanced education, and compassionate approach enables her to guide clients toward higher quality of life. Beyond her professional endeavors, Dr. Tattrie finds joy in traveling between Michigan, Florida, and other destinations with her husband, her high school crush, embracing life's adventures together. So the other thing that we'll be referencing throughout the whole presentation is this book, Wintering: The Power of Rest and Retreat in Difficult Times by Katherine May. So it's a very easy read. It's big words, not that many pages. So the information on that is, within that, there's the power of pausing for reflection and renewal, self-compassion as a cornerstone for resilience, rituals and routines that nourish stability and creativity, and redefining productivity to prioritize sustainable well-being. So again, there's a couple different topics going on here, but they all interrelate. The one is the idea of the OOG type of design style, which it's an atmosphere of warmth, well-being, coziness, when you feel peace and can enjoy simple pleasures and being in the moment. Some of the things that correspond with that OOG, if you're not familiar with it, are colors, neutral colors, warm tones, creams, grays, beiges, browns. The textures are soft textures like plush blankets, comforters, pillows. Can be togetherness, can be alone. It's mainly intentional for you. It can include red wine, it include dark chocolate. Again, it's not always the item, although there are items that are common to OOG. It's you being intentional and using those to slow down and reset yourself, which again is part of the wintering, which again is part of what Patricia's here to talk about. So that's how they go together. And then an example of the OOG that we put together here, we were fortunate to work with Chatham House, who represents Varellin Furniture. So all the items here, except the rug, is from Ghiordes Knot, of course, are from the Varellin collection down at Chatham House. Varellin, is very OOG-ish. So when we start, we often view rest as a sign of weakness, but wintering reframes it as a necessary pause for repair and reflection. Just like nature withdraws in winter, allowing the land to rest and replenish, we too need times of quiet introspection. This wintering allows us to process experiences, heal from emotional wounds, and gain clarity on our path forward. So this is part of the concepts from the book, and now Patricia will kind of interlay that into things that will relate to you as people and as business owners.
I'm on?
You're on.
Okay. It's my pleasure being here today, and I thank you all for coming. I'm sure the roads weren't all that great, but thank you. My intention for our time together is to provide some tools to better help you manage your day-to-day life in a more peaceful way. But before we go there, I have to acknowledge the creative power that we have in the room today. My sister is an interior designer, and I have benefited greatly from her beautiful creations and somewhat understand the love and caring that it takes to make that happen. So on behalf of all of your clients and myself, I want to express our collective gratitude for the kindness, caring, understanding, and rich, rich, rich loveliness you bring to our lives. Thank you. So, as Joel indicated, this is a fine time of the year to really focus on increasing our sense of well-being. This takes commitment and time, but the benefits are many. The most compelling one in my mind is when anxiety arises, we become flooded with cortisol, which is very hard on our immune system, and that's just not good for our bodies. But besides the cortisol issue, I think we are all striving to feel more grounded and peaceful instead of living with worry and anxiety. From what I understand, you all have a very challenging job, and if I have it right, you're responsible for managing projects with limits on your ability to control all the moving parts. You have to promote your own well-earned talents, balancing clients' desires and expectations without offending anyone. You explore and travel uncharted paths that at times can be very lonely. You have to say yes when you want to say no. You plan and count on finances that go awry with vendor delays, client dissatisfaction, or any other unpredictable bump in the road. You have to be an expert in relationship development and maintenance between vendors, clients, husbands, and wives, utilizing the fine art of listening, holding boundaries, and managing conflict. And finally, you have to reserve enough energy to fan your own creative flame with limited supportive resources. During these winter months, you may want to set the intention to unearth situations that cause worry and perhaps sadness. These are called triggers, which can be just about anything, including people, places, things, situations, or circumstances. Examples of triggers that can get you riled up in your line of work might include a client or vendor's tone of voice, feelings of losing control, or worse yet, not having any, uncertainty over how you're going to pull all the moving pieces together, conflict with challenging or disgruntled clients, and maybe the most difficult, the unpredictable. So how do we know if we are triggered? We may experience body shifts, maybe a racing heart or chest or neck tightness. It's interesting to note that our body can alert us to anxiety before we even know it logically. We may have increased worries with thoughts turning or looping over and over in our mind. We may experience emotional changes, such as an overall sense of dread or feeling a desire to throw in the towel. And finally, our behavior changes, and we may start isolating or avoiding other people or overconsuming food or alcohol. Once you feel a shift in your body, we want to tune in to what sets these shifts off. We want to pay attention to our thoughts and emotions because they are key clues in the types of coping mechanisms that will help us from defaulting into our automatic disturbing patterns. So it might go something like this. I'm feeling tightness in my chest. What was my last thought? What emotion am I feeling? The theory is that leaning into the thought or emotion instead of defaulting into unhealthy patterns will help us with the insight we need. But before we address coping mechanisms, it's important to go a little bit deeper into distorted thoughts and beliefs, contributing or influencing our sense of well-being. There are several different types of cognitive distortions, but one that seems to affect many is catastrophizing, thinking the worst-case scenario. A potential example of this in your life may include, my client just left me a voicemail message, and she said she wants to talk to me about my husband's thoughts on my design proposal. Catastrophizing thoughts would be, oh my God, he hates the whole thing. He changed everything. Now I have to do a whole new color scheme, and I have already worked out the details, and I have to do it over again. and recalculate the pricing and how am I ever going to have it done by the holidays, and we just go on and on. It's like going down a rabbit hole, and none of it is based on the truth, thus the term distorted thoughts. What should we do to interrupt these patterns? Awareness is half the battle. Once we know what we are doing, we are so much better positioned to change it. You might visualize a stop sign and choose another thought that is more aligned with the truth. This may end up being, I don't know, which can be a daunting thought for some. Practice leaning into, I don't know, to see what's so daunting about these words. You may find that it's more comfortable in this state of being than it is in untruthful, problematic storytelling. You might breathe deeply and change the worrisome picture that is going through your mind to perhaps a beautiful nature scene. Place yourself in there in your mind and breathe it all in. Speaking of breathing, generally it's a grounding, which allows us to reach for the truth versus making up stories that will only upset us. More ways to manage distorted thought patterns? Proactive body scans are a good habit to get into. This helps us become more attuned to our body, so if the shift occurs, we identify it more readily and can change our reaction. You can check in with yourself to see if there is any truth to the thought and replace it or substitute it with a truthful alternative. You may want to identify a specific time of the day to spend on obsessive thoughts. Set a timer with maybe 5 or 10 minutes and don't think of anything else until the timer goes off. You may find that the power of the thoughts have diminished through your intentionality. And during the course of the day, whenever your mind drifts into the unwanted thoughts, save it until the specific time of day you've allocated for obsessive thinking. You could seek out feedback to get a handle on if your thoughts are distorted from a trusted partner or friend. And you can ask for time and space if you need to settle into a more truthful frame of mind. You can meditate, and we can do this later on in the presentation, just a little practice for you. In summary, these are the practices that can serve as a framework for quiet introspection, as suggested by Katherine May in her book, Winnering. Although through these self-assessments and changes, we can begin to move toward a more peaceful way of life.
So our next area of topic is facing the dark to find the light. Difficult times are inevitable, but wintering encourages us to see them as opportunities for growth. When we allow ourselves to fully experience the darkness, the frustration, or the sadness, we can gain a deeper understanding of ourselves and our strengths. By confronting these shadows, we can emerge stronger and more resilient.
I'm a big believer that truth and insight into ourselves, both positive and negative, can bring peace, particularly when we do so with curiosity and without judgment. Some of us may fear facing our limitations and push away, reject, repress, or hide this darker side. Perhaps it's our less enlightened side. Included can be emotions, fears, desires, or traits that are in conflict with our self-image. Our lack of insight into these less desirable traits might be more peaceful in the short term because we don't have to face them. But in the long term, there can be negative consequences. For example, we miss the opportunity to understand our ego and move toward the acceptance that we are all human and therefore imperfect. Conversely, acceptance of the dark can result in feeling more balanced and whole. And maybe we need to see the darker side to illuminate our positive, lighter side. Insight into both can strengthen our foundation. That is, if you will, the operational headquarters inside of us influencing us as we move through the world. I believe our foundation needs to be steeped in truth, both positive and not so positive. Otherwise, we run the risk of it crumbling beneath us, making us feel off balance or less self-confident. Ideally, our foundation begins to form as children through our parents' attunement with us. They're spending time with and reflecting back our strengths and weaknesses in a loving manner. However, this doesn't always occur, so we need to unearth our foundation as adults. As Katherine May suggests, one of the benefits of accepting the dark side is it allows us to be aware of the pitfalls to avoid or what we need to work on to lessen the darkness. When we find ourselves headed to the dark side, we want to pause and allow ourselves to feel any pain with compassion for ourselves instead of numbing or running away from them. Some believe that if we allow negative emotions to move through us, They will be replaced by the next emotion and the next emotion and the next, unless we hold on to them or bury them. Sometimes leaning into more difficult, more intense emotions can be daunting, likely requiring a good, solid coping mechanism or therapeutic intervention or assistance. When we bury negative emotions, alternative funky behaviors can arise. A very common emotion that I find folks choose to ignore is anger. They completely bypass this feeling, believing it is unattractive or very frightening, so they stuff it and become anxious or depressed. An example of results from burying emotions is the notion that some people take their anger and turn it inward, which can result in depression. Some say that procrastination is a sign of hidden anger, which can cause us trouble in getting things done. I'm sure you've also heard the term passive-aggressive, which can also result from not addressing our anger. That said, anger in and of itself is a very appropriate emotion. What matters is what we do with it, how we express it. We want to acknowledge anger and get it out of our body with movement, such as using a punching bag, walking or running, journaling, or discussing the situation with a trusted friend. The latter I say with caution, however, is using a friend as a sounding board can be a really good tool for appropriate periods of time. However, this can preclude us from practicing our own coping mechanisms and/or can create dependency. Further, we don't want to exacerbate ruminating thoughts by using others as a dumping ground with unlimited capacity. And let me confess here, when I worked with the corporate environment, I could and did clear a room with my ruminating complaints about how unjust, how unfair, how stupid, how ridiculous the culture was. These aren't my proudest moments, but I did spend years doing it. But with the assistance of others, I became aware that corporate culture was completely misaligned with my values and it was time to move on. While this change was daunting, I'm now in a profession that I can love and be proud of. I tell this story because it really does drive home the reality that surrounding ourselves with individuals, or in this case, a culture that values things that are in direct opposition to our own, can be very toxic. So we either become Teflon and let the dysfunction roll off us, or we look for communities more aligned with our values. Either way, the goal is to learn to self-soothe through compassion for self and others, and perhaps when appropriate, apologize for our roles in conflict with commitments to do better in the future. Forgiveness is an action that is not intended to let others off the hook, but rather to find peace within ourselves. Ideally, these behaviors provide closure, which is helpful in many cases. Shifting gears now from the darker side, I want to talk about the opposite, which is the lighter side. The part that we can be proud of, the part that we should honor and stand in. To get our arms around this side, I often suggest that individuals do an inventory of their values or perhaps virtues to bring to light who they are or maybe even their identity. I want to highlight that our identity is not what we can do, what we can achieve. It is not steeped in our performance. Rather, our identity, in part, is the values and virtues that we bring to any situation as we move through the world. Awareness of our values can bolster our foundation. An example, I value and ideally live my life with honesty, or I value being fair and kind. Knowing what we stand for and aligning our behaviors accordingly can ground us, which is where peace resides. Ideally, our values are our guiding lights directing our behaviors. Another benefit of knowing our values is that it helps us make decisions when the decisions are tough. The gray is much more difficult to navigate, whereas black and white or right or wrong thinking is much more straightforward. For example, if you're trying to figure out if you should tell your client there is a delay in their delivery, there is benefit in the short term to avoid their disappointment. However, you may struggle with violating an honesty value that may cause you to disrespect yourself. If our behaviors are not aligned with our values, we can expect that we will not be feeling on top of our game because in some ways we betrayed ourselves. More examples. If you value kindness and you lose your cool with a client, you're probably going to feel relieved or very justified in the short term, but beat yourself on the back end because you just violated a value, perhaps of kindness. Or if you value honesty and aren't forthcoming with information Anxiety may be the outcome because now there's a cover-up lurking in the shadows. In summary, facing the dark to find the light, as May discusses, is being strong enough to face our gut-wrenching limitations and fears through acceptance and compassion.
So our next topic is self-compassion, your greatest ally. When facing challenges, it's easy to fall into self-criticism. Katherine May emphasizes the importance of self-compassion. Be kind to yourself, acknowledge your struggles, and celebrate your small victories. Prioritize activities that nourish your mind, body, and spirit, just like you would nurture a loved one going through a tough time.
Often, we find that perfectionism or perhaps fear of failure are at the root of our lack of well-being. We can judge ourselves without mercy. Perhaps we have taken up and internalized our parents' critical voices, or maybe others' expectations of us were so high that we fear being anything less than 100%. Or maybe we were valued for what we could do versus who we are. So if we fail at a project, we are nothing. There is no benefit to shame. It erodes our very core. When we feel it, the best antidote is self-compassion. Perhaps we can overlay our shame with compassionate regret, coupled with commitment to ourselves that we will avoid repeating behaviors that erode our foundation as it's just too taxing. When we face our shame with self-compassion, we can get into a space to assess and understand what triggered us so we are better positioned to utilize coping skills. If we are able to stay present, we make conscious choices instead of defaulting into old dysfunctional patterns. We can also make a commitment to ourselves that it will not happen again, and better yet, really reinforce the commitment by sharing or teaching about our mistakes. The intention is to make meaning out of our regrets instead of them festering inside of us, and to do so begins with compassion. I would say it's time we start talking to ourselves like we do a beloved friend. Wouldn't we prefer to stay in the truth of who we are instead of making up stories about what losers we are? Maybe we can stop judging ourselves so we can be more compassionate with others. But please know, I'm not recommending that we let ourselves or others off the hook for hurtful behaviors. We don't want compassion to blind us to natural emotions such as anger, as this will decrease our wisdom, which arrives when we are tapped into both our logic and emotions. There are many tools to help with this initiative. One that is my favorite, but has mixed reviews, is a guided loving-kindness meditation, which I have listed on the sheet that you have there. A guided meditation is one in which the speaker talks throughout, focusing on themes to help with anxiety, depression, or self-care, and a whole bunch of other topics.
He talks really slow.
So he might put you to sleep.
It might be good in your own private time.
Let me just say, these guys were not impressed.
We said no.
They vetoed it.
You would all be down for the count.
Okay. I think these are worthy of exploration as they can be quite soothing.
Yeah.
Because you give so much creative energy away, it is important that you fill your own gas tank, that you relax and settle into who you are. Otherwise, it would not be surprising if you deplete yourself on a daily basis. A meditation such as this can offer relaxation and, most importantly, will infuse you with loving kindness for yourself and others.
Our fast-paced world often leaves us feeling overwhelmed and disconnected. Wintering challenges us to slow down and appreciate the present moment. This may involve simplifying our schedules, setting realistic goals, practicing mindfulness techniques. By embracing a slower pace of life, we create a space for creativity, deep connections with others, and greater appreciation for the beauty of everyday life.
Okay, so slowing down. I would be in my darker side if I stood here and told you that in my older age, I have learned to slow down. Quite the opposite. I move at a fast pace and recently discovered that my daily goal is to finish all my work and organization so that I can sit in my recliner and mindlessly play word search on my iPad. It's very meaningful, intentional, and purposeful endeavor. My husband says that I move at warp speed, and while exaggerated, it does have some truth to it. Some of us perceive that there is never enough time, so we move as though that is the truth. We exhaust ourselves forgetting that everything doesn't need to be done immediately or even today. Or sometimes we move so quickly to fix something that left alone would have resolved itself without intervention. Pacing is everything. To really embrace a slower pace requires that we remain present to avoid defaulting into well-worn, fast patterns of behavior. We also would benefit by avoiding catastrophized thinking, such as I need to get this done yesterday. There was always benefit to checking ourselves to ensure that we remain in the truth of time. One of the best tools that I can offer, again with mixed reviews, is a mindfulness meditation that we can facilitate ourselves. And I thought maybe you could take this home with you if you found it spoke to you. I'd like to demonstrate this with you so you consider taking it home, but we should talk about the benefits first. In the beginning of this meditation that we're going to practice, we will acknowledge the senses, the sense, touch, and hearing, as it brings us into the present moment. The senses help us focus on the moment instead of focusing on the past or the future. Breath is a key component of meditation, as it helps ground us instead of feeling like we're flapping around in the wind with limited control. When we breathe, we allow ourselves to feel slower, calmer, more intentional, and definitely more present. Neuroplasticity, or the brain's ability to rewire itself, forming new neural connections, can help break the cycle of negative ruminating thoughts, the ones that loop around and around in our mind that we can't seem to quiet or get rid of. Focusing on breathing with mindfulness meditation allows the brain to seek out and ideally create pathways to foster a more peaceful mind. I would encourage you all to implement this into your life proactively on a daily basis so that when stressful situations arise, new, healthier ways of being will become more automatic. So if you're comfortable with me leading a brief meditation or are so inclined, let's practice. So if you feel comfortable, close your eyes. Feel free to open them or close them, but I would really encourage you to just keep them closed until I give you a open your eyes prompt. But do whatever feels comfortable. This is all about your comfort. And if you would, place both your feet flat on the floor. And you can position your hands with your palms up or your palms down, whichever feels more natural or comfortable. And now, with your feet on the ground, feel the earth supporting you. Feel the bottom of the seat holding you. And feel the back of the chair bolstering you. And now, if you would, you don't need to speak them, just notice any sense in the room. Notice anything you're hearing. And notice the small space between where your hands are intersecting with your thigh. And when you're ready, shift your focus to your breathing. There's no need to change it. Just follow it as it comes in through your nose and exits your body for the next several breaths. And on one of the next breaths, let's do some changing and breathe in deeply through your nose and see if you can take the breath all the way down into your gut before exhaling through your mouth. And try that for the next few breaths. And then you might want to do a brief body scan and notice if you have any tightness in your body, such as the back of your neck or chest. And if so, on one of the next breaths, take the inhale of fresh, clean, beautiful breath and direct it right into the constricted area before exhaling. You may want to do that for several breaths. Take the breath in and let it swirl around any tight area, loosening it all up before exhaling. And now for the next several minutes, you can resume breathing normally, however that feels to you, and follow your breath as you inhale and exhale. That's your only job. And as you continue to follow your breath in and out, if you find that your thoughts are intruding on your ability to focus only on the breath, gently, without judgment, acknowledge it as a thought and return to focus on your breath as it comes in and leaves your body. And again, without judgment, we want to acknowledge any thoughts that have broken through our focus and bring ourselves back to the breathing over and over and over again. And whenever you're ready, you can open your eyes. I do have to say that mindfulness meditation could be challenging for those of us with active minds, but you may find that the rewards are worth it. Although we did play soothing music during our practice, typically any sounds would be avoided, leaving the meditator with only the breath. Also, I should note, a 1 or 2 minute mindfulness practice can be used in the car or when walking or really any time of the day. All you need to do is breathe deeply, focus on the breath as you inhale and exhale. I would ask you to consider really settling in and investing in yourselves, to prioritize some of our assessments and practices discussed today, to show up with and for yourself, seeking self-care to nurture your creative spirit and soul. Thank you so much for inviting me to share my insights with you, and I wish you a wonderful New Year and a snuggly winter.
So, thank you,
Very
Patricia.
kind.
We have one more slide, the comfort of rituals. Routines can provide a sense of stability and comfort, especially during difficult times. Wintering highlights the power of rituals in creating a sense of structure and purpose. Establishing meaningful routines, whether it's a morning meditation practice, a weekly family dinner, can help us feel grounded and in control amidst uncertainty. So as you all know, as designers, business owners, having a ritual of a daily schedule obviously would be a good thing. You know, committing that, being intentional that you know what you're going to do every day. Get up, get ready, get dressed, even if you're not leaving your home office that day. Plan your day, so have a specific time that you work on collections, that you do design, that you do marketing and social media. So the main thing I think in all of this is we all know these things, it's just being intentional with your time and with your resources and using a lot of the techniques that Patricia's talked about that are in the book. And then again, just with the whole OOG type of design style, it's just being intentional to help give us techniques to calm ourselves, to get us through the day, to get us through different issues. So, but again, if you have any questions, we have contact information, we have emails, you can always follow up, and we certainly appreciate your time today. I hope you found it beneficial.